Greetings, everyone. This is Trey. I'm here on this 15th day of January 2018. I'm here again with my friend Michael. We had a conversation a week or so ago, and I had a nice conversation actually. And he did some ruminating and asked if we might have an audience again. And so I said sure. So here we are on this Saturday. So welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me again, Trey.
All right, man. So I'm going to let you drive the conversation because you had several things that you spit at me there and said you want to talk about. So I'll let you, I'll do the, to drive the conversation now, if you'd like.
Okay. So I want to ask you a few questions. So is there anything neutral in the scheme of things when you're looking for the university of diversity,
The diversity.
Yeah, you're trying to unify diversity. Is there anything that exists that can just be amoral?
Amoral.
Or non-moral? Is there any neutral things?
Well, yeah, I think there are such a thing. It's called adiaphora in theological terms. It's like, which means neither right nor wrong. Like, for example, ketchup or mustard or vanilla or chocolate. These are just personal preferences, and they certainly are not moral in and of themselves, green or blue, you know, and people just have their preferences in certain things. So yeah, I would say there's certain things that are neutral.
Okay. So here, let me just close this. All right. So have you studied David Hume at all?
A little bit. What would you like to talk about? He brought a great critique to the empirical science as well as to religion.
So I find him fascinating. His basic thesis for why analytics fails at a certain point is because it's about the impressions that we have in our minds. So everything we know is from experience. So the ideas about cause and effect, you know, if we saw the billiard balls, if we saw a white billiard ball going towards a colored one and we had no prior experience, what would we expect? We wouldn't know. Would you agree?
Yeah, he said that there are, we have relationships, so-called a contiguous relationship. So we see certain things happen and other things come, and we are customary relationships. So we're accustomed to when the cue ball is hit with the, obviously the cue stick hits the object ball and it goes into the other ball. We have this customary relationship that we see that it looks like it causes one to the other, but we don't actually know for sure what is causing the say, for example, the cue ball and the object ball, I'm mixing myself up here, are really causing each other to do things. So, and he was right in that we can't know for absolute certainty. We can know causality. Now, here's the thing. Some people say that Hume questioned the validity of causality. That's not true. If he did, though, that would be ridiculous because causality is an analytical principle. In other words, it's true by definition. It's not something that is derived from observation, but rather it's something that drives observation because it's the law of non-contradiction. I'm sorry, causality is merely an extrapolation or an application of the law of non-contradiction.
Could you define that a little more? So causality, you would say, is not merely our experience superimposed on the potential future. It's what you just described is, no, we're actually applying something more fundamental to the phenomenon.
That's right. So the scientific method basically has two halves. You have induction and deduction. You have empiricism and you have rationalism. That's the scientific method. So what you do is you experience things with your senses, and then you take those experiences and you filter them through the matrix of logic, and that's how we can. I mean, Dr. Sproul. Anything you hear from me, mostly is going to say I'm just regurgitating what I learned from Dr. Sproul, R.C. Sproul. But
I used to listen to him a lot.
What's that?
I used to listen to R.C. Sproul a lot. My dad was a big fan, along with the angry pastor. I forget his name, but yeah.
Who's the angry pastor? Is it John MacArthur or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember his name. It was White something. Yeah, I'm not sure. But
James
he was the guy. He was like, he always wore a brim hat, and he got a reputation for being the angry pastor.
Is he the guy that would smoke cigars and blow it?
Yes. Yes.
He's crazy. I can't remember his name now. Yeah, he died. He was a nut, but Dr. Sproul was not. So basically, science is just the application. Really, all you're doing with science is really just organizing taxonomy. You experience things, and then you look at I want to say similarities and differences, and then you categorize according in a taxonomy everything that you experience. That's basically what science is. But you cannot do any of that unless you have logic that's giving you the deductive power to take from the general to the particular, and then taking that particular and applying it out into specific ways. So causality, like I said, is just an application of the law of non-contradiction. Law of non-contradiction is going to be, Aristotle called the organon, the instrument by which we categorize all the information that we have. And the reason I say that causality is an application of law of non-contradiction, if you want to say that causality doesn't hold, you're going to have to say that there is an effect without a cause. And the only way that you can define an effect is to say it as a result of a cause. The only way that you can define a cause is to say it's that which gives rise to an effect. So each definition is mutually reliant upon the other one in order for it to make any sense. So if you want to say, I want to have an effect without a cause, you just made a nonsense statement, because the only way that you can describe an effect is to invoke the idea of cause. And furthermore, if you have an effect without a cause, in order for an effect to be an effect happens, it's something that happens. So an effect, if you have an effect without a cause, then in effect you have an effect that at some time had to be and not be at the same time in the same relationship, which is a violation of law of non-contradiction. That's why I say it's an extrapolation of the law of non-contradiction, causality.
Okay, so yeah, I want to probe that a little bit, because it seems to me there's an assumption that there's an antecedent or an absolute opposite to everything. As if there is discrete objects, and we can, rationally come to the conclusion that one thing cannot be the same thing in an opposite relationship. I think I'm trying to say the non-contradiction law in a layman terms. So you're saying that something cannot be both black and white
at the same time in the same relationship.
In the same relationship. Would you agree that there are no discrete objects?
Well, what do you mean by discrete object?
Like our bodies, our dogs and cats.
Okay, now you're defining. You sound like you're from the what's that called? The Venetian school, the Vienna school from Vienna. Logical positivism.
Yeah.
That the law of positivism had it. It's funny, I can't remember the stuff. I haven't interacted with for a while, but it's the law of verification that says that which is true is only that which can be verified empirically. So when you say an object, you're speaking of only that which is physical then?
No. Maybe
an idea is not physical.
Yeah. Maybe I'll say that for a little bit in a minute here, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is, are we not taking for granted that these impressions that we have, that we superimpose on reality, we're always considering things in absolutes. A golden mountain, when I say that, you picture two contiguous things, or two, and you can picture that just because of the way our pattern recognition software in here does stuff. But to say that a golden mountain exists just because I can imagine it would be absurd, right?
Right, because I'm not anomalous. I'm a realist. So I think there's reality outside of my mind, and so when I'm trying to get knowledge, what I'm trying to do is correspond to that which I am experiencing, rather than trying to think that somehow that I can create something by my impressions, because I know that's not possible.
Um, Uniformitarianism, I think it's called, where we assume that the past will be the same as the future.
Sure.
That, you know, phenomena that we observe can be repeated.
Right.
So you're okay with that? You're okay with empiricism in that sense, that we can, probe the universe in search of new ideas by our experience?
Yes, because I believe the universe is logos. It's organized. It's not chaos. So that's the whole point of unity and diversity. Unity is logic. Unity is coherence. And so, yes, I think that the universe ultimately it coheres with each other. And although there is an entropic factor and there is chaos that in some sense interacts with this universe, overall, it is coherence. And so, yeah, I believe that there is a way that which things can go, which way we can know things.
Okay. We had said on a thread a little bit a couple days ago, we were talking about the ontological argument and how, it seems to me like an assertion almost. I don't understand why necessarily why existence has to be better than non-existence. And then I wanted to follow up with my understanding of the Big Bang Theory and how, at a certain period during the inflation, bodies and objects, before they coalesced into larger things, were decelerating, right? And now they're accelerating, meaning well, there's a couple theories for why that is, which I'm not going to try to explain, but essentially there's more things are being pulled apart more than they are being kept together these days, right? In the beginning, for a couple million, maybe billion years, there was a logical cause and effect situation going on. You can't have, the second law of thermodynamics. Things are supposed to be winding down or falling apart or, slowing down. There's not going to be what is it called? Goose free lunch, where he says there's this, oh man, I forget. I wish I could put it correctly. I'm not going to try though, but essentially we're gaining momentum. We're spreading apart faster. What do you think about that? Because that would imply this, that there's more nothing pulling things apart than there's something keeping them together. And we do have to touch on this apposite stuff, because like when we think of nothing, obviously our colloquial understanding of nothing is, I can't even understand nothing. What is nothing? Nothing must have properties of some sort. And if, we have a lot of symmetry in our universe. So, antiparticles of all sorts. And I don't know what you think about virtual particles, but I am questioning this simplistic view that there are literal opposites. Therefore, we can say the law of non-contradiction applies at every level of reality.
Well, how would you question it? How would you question the law of non-contradiction?
I don't believe there is such a thing as an absolute opposite of any one thing.
Do you believe that absolutely?
Huh?
Do you believe that absolutely?
I believe that could be demonstrated, at least theoretically. If we
but you're assuming, but you're relying on the very principle you say doesn't exist in order to question it.
Right. But I do think that we have to put the rationality and our reason aside and update it according to our empirical findings, right?
By reason?
Yeah, we should update our reason.
Well, you can't put it aside if that's what you're using.
well, do you think that there are actual opposites, that there could be an actual opposite to something?
Well, I think that there is an on and there's an off. There is a right and there's a left. There is a positive and a negative. I don't. Where's the tertium quid there? I don't understand the third way.
Essentially, are we not? We're always approximating. everything we're doing, science, we're always approximating. We can't actually have the degree of certitude that it's almost like you are taking for granted.
I'm not saying that we can't have absolute certitude, because that's something that's the prerogative only of omniscience, and we don't know everything. So everything is tentative, everything is marked with us by faith. And we can have certain degrees of stronger and lesser knowledge about things, but it's not possible for us to have complete certainty about anything. I mean, the thing I can be most certain about is my own existence, and that I'm not self-existent. That would be probably the top tier for me of things that I know with the most amount of certainty. But I mean, I can't say for 100% sure, because I'm a dependent in my existence, that I can't have certainty even about that in a complete sense.
But we're not presuppositional.
No. I'm presupposing the instruments for, it's called classical foundationism. I am presupposing the logic, and I'm presupposing basic sense perception, because I have to have those. If I don't have those, then there's no inquiry. So I'm granting those. So those are presuppositions. But the difference between, I just had a conversation with somebody the other day, the difference between presuppositionalism and classical foundationalism: presuppositionalism presupposes the contents of the argument, like God exists. I'm making a proposition. When I say I'm presupposing sense perception and logic, I'm not making a proposition. That's not propositional. Those are the instruments for the propositions. So that's the difference. That's why presupposition commits to begging the question fallacy, and I'm not.
Right. You're just asserting God.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Yeah.
But are we not approximating when we use our faculties, when we're when we're using reason, and we're using our experience, and we're our sensory data? Like, are we not?
We have to. I mean, that's we have to. But be careful that you don't go over the other end and just say, well, we can't know anything.
Well, because I don't think that. I don't think that. I just think that this is a fascinating topic, and I think that it should be probed more rigorously, I guess. Well,
sure.
I'm not like I'm doing anything to help it along, but I'm reading people. Oh man, what was I saying? I was saying that essentially, I think we are only approximating when we're using the way our sensory input understands things. We make Euclidean geometry in our minds, right? Those things we can think of as fact because they can be demonstrated in a concrete way, even if it is abstract. But there are no perfect triangles in the universe. There are no perfect squares. And so we're only ever approximating. So I don't think you can say that the law of non-contradiction holds up at every level. And that's only because the thing that you're saying, like, let's say I don't know, what's an example of this? You always say, or I've heard this before, that you can't have, I can't say, Niels Bohr says he's trying to question the law of non-contradiction, and you call him sloppy because once you do that, you're saying that the opposite of what you're saying is also true, right? So I feel like that's assuming that there's a metaphysical constant throughout all of things, as if there were things.
Well, there must be an ultimate. When you use the example of a triangle and you say, we're having to approximate, and we never know, we never experience a perfect triangle, what are you measuring it against then?
What am I measuring a triangle against?
Yeah, and you say there's no perfect triangles. Well, what are you talking about then?
We can conceive of a perfect triangle.
Okay, so that's right. And so the perfect triangle does exist, even if so in our mind we cannot replicate it in perfection, but it's by way of analogy to the perfect that we can even talk about such things, right?
Well, that was my point last time, was that this is the way our minds work, as opposed to it being something implying natural laws or implying cause and effect relationships, et cetera. I mean, we think in terms of cause and effect relationships for all things. And then we think of this eternal regress, and we're like, it better stop somewhere, otherwise, what does it just go on for infinity? You know, what do you think about this idea? I'm probably shooting around too much, and you're getting confused about what I'm saying. But what do you think about this idea? If you're to say that the first cause started the preceding causes, how is it in that set? Because every effect in that set had a cause, and if you're saying that the initial cause did not,
Mhm.
how is it still in that set? How is it in that group?
Well, in a sense, it's not. It can't be. That's why God is God is of a different order than us. We can only know Him. It's called the via causalitatis. We can look at Him and we can extrapolate from our world in which we live. That's where the cosmological argument comes in. But if we're going to speak about God as He is, we're going to be speaking what's called the via negativa. We're only going to be, it's called a apophatic theology. We're going to be thinking about Him by saying what He is not. He is invisible. He is immutable. That's not by negation, immutable. I'm thinking of ageless. He is, immaterial. Did I already say that? So whenever we talk about God, invisible, immaterial,
Yeah, you're saying what
non-corporeal.
he's not.
So it's by way of negation.
Right.
We cannot know God as He is, but we don't want to promote Him for something that He is not. So oftentimes you hear, if you read about theology historically, when we speak about God ad intra, which means the way that God is as He relates to Himself. For us, we cannot participate in that imperfection. We can participate it by way of analogy, but we have to use, that's another term, we use analogical language. We use language of analogy. That's where anthropomorphism comes in, anthropopathism, where God uses language as if He were a man so that we can understand Him. But God Himself really is not, this is a big controversy in my theological circles right now, in Reformed community right now. There's a big controversy over the impassibility of God. And all of our confessions say that God is impassible. And people get upset today because it means that God is not moved by passion. And people get upset with that, say, oh, well, God is cold and inert. Well, no, I'm not saying that. In fact, He is the perfection of all that He is. He is the perfection of love. He is the perfection of everything, justice and wrath and everything that He is. He is the perfection of it. But He doesn't move from one state to another. I got food in my tooth. He doesn't move. He doesn't move from one state to another like we do. In other words, God is love, the Bible says. And what it says that is we are not love. We ourselves, we have love. It's an accidental property for us. So I participate in love sometimes, and I don't participate in love sometimes. God is not like that, because the reason that I move from state is because I'm acted on by something outside of me that moves me. It affects me, and I either draw closer to that thing or I recoil away from it, depending on how it affects me. Well, God's not like that. So what we have to do is we have to use language of accommodation, and this is what God does. It says that God repented that He made man when He, sends the flood. Well, God didn't really repent, but He's relating to us in a way that we can understand the consequences of evil and how it relates to us in our potential states that we have. We're potential actual, everything for us. I'm potentially angry, I'm potentially happy, and then I'm actualized with something, affected by something outside of me that moves me into that state. So God's not moving around from state to state, because otherwise He'd be in effect. He wouldn't be self-existent.
Interesting. And that's where I trip up, because I'm thinking, yeah, if it's the ground of all these things, the ground of all being, it's perfect love, perfect this, perfect that, how could that thing have potential? How can it move?
Well, it's not it's not limited by potentiality. Would you agree with that?
I don't know.
In other words, it's a necessary corollary that it flows from actuality, because actuality must give rise to the actualization of potential being. In other words, something is in its potential state and it's reduced down to its actual state. It doesn't do it itself. It must be acted on by something else that moves it to that real state. Like for us, when we become babies, when the sperm and the ovum are united, a new human is formed. We're not that until we are put together. We are complex beings, and therefore, since we are composite complex beings, we're not what we are until the parts come together to make us what we are. And those parts that come together require a composer. And if there's no composer, then there's no bringing together to actualize. And that which brings the actualization itself must be actual in order to bring it to be to what it is. So that's why we've got to have, there's got to be pure actuality in order for there to be any actualization of any potential whatsoever. In other words, there wouldn't be, I think you probably agree with me, if God were to withhold his hand from us at any moment, that we would not fall apart, but we would simply cease to be. We are contingent. We are completely dependent upon him. He is the one that gives us our ontology, and he's the one that actualizes us in every sense.
Isn't that a bit dated, though? I mean, after Newton, there was an upheaval in theological circles. What? God's not holding the planets in their orbits, things like that. There's like laws or some kind of things that we can pick up on and predict for. Yeah.
And that's what gave rise to the deism, because it says the thing that seemed to make sense is, I think people in the deist circles could realize that potential being cannot be self-existent. However, we see such uniformity in this world in which we have. It appears that maybe God just created everything, wound it up, and just let it go. And that was what a lot of the founding fathers, because that was the sexy of the day. Almost nobody's a deist these days. Because I just don't think it's very appealing. I don't think it's very satisfactory.
Well, it was almost like a placeholder for avowed atheism. It's just like,
well, I think it was a placeholder for in moving in that direction. I think it helped to people wanting to, I think, move in that direction of autonomy, which has been the story of mankind from the beginning. Wanting to come up with some way where we can justify. Richard Dawkins has said, the thing that's so great about evolution, it actually gave a intellectual credibility to the idea of there not being a God. And I think that's why it became so popular so quickly and is even today, although I don't think it's very compelling at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to argue against God. Ideally, I want to find the truth.
Sure.
Right?
As I do too.
Yeah. And I do think that rationality, our reason, is not the best tool for various reasons. Can we ever get over sex? Can we ever get over hunger? Can we ever get over any of these things that are innate in us? What if thoughts are innate in us? What if certain memes are innate in us, meaning full, ideas or forms of primary ideas. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know about computer programming, but when you're writing a language, you have to create what are called primitives, which are, the basic building blocks for the code that will be, able to be utilized by other programmers. You got to create Booleans like true and false. You got to create integers or decimals, and all of those things are they're abstractions of some more basic one and zeros, right? They're memory locations, and how to orchestrate those memory locations in such a way that you can make the abstraction true and false, or yes.
But you're giving an example, though, that seems to me to say that law of non-contradiction is the very foundation for computer coding.
No. I'm more trying to get. I'm kind of going back a little bit, because when I was talking about, is there anything neutral? What if the thing in the beginning was neutral, and then what we have now is an emergent phenomena where we harken back to those times and think, oh, we must have been just like this. We must have had the same kind of appreciation for love and goodness and eating and all these things. I feel like that's anthropomorphizing God in our own image. God could be a formula.
Yes, but whatever you want to call him, he is something that we could not be were he not giving us our being. Would you agree with that? In
I
other
don't,
words,
I don't know about
we're
being.
not creating him. We are reflecting on his objective reality.
I'm not sure about being itself. We are not, we are actualized in some way that we can understand when we think about I was born of my mother was born of her mother. We can think all the way back to the beginning. Oh, there must have been a first human. But we have to update our reason with science, and even if the science starts nitpicking at those things that are so easy for us to wrap our heads around, if they start going like, law of non-contradiction may not be applicable in every case, and I think the double slit experiment does show that
No,
it's
it
both
doesn't.
a wave and a particle. It's
Not really. I mean, you're this demonstrates our two different schools are coming from. I'm coming from a rationalist perspective. You're coming from an empiricist perspective, and I'm saying that
natural.
the idea precedes the action. The rational is the ground of the physical. And
Because something cannot be actualized unless it is thought of or potential. If it's not potential, then it can't be actualized, right?
well, I mean, both logically and ontologically, um, there must be uh, personhood, there must be mind. We have the objective realities of mathematics that obviously is not something that we can.
You're frozen. Is it me that's frozen? Uh-oh. I'm on there. You there?
Yeah, can you not hear me?
Oh, there we go.
How did I drop out?
Yeah, just a glitch.
So the idea of mathematics and the um, mental ideas that would you agree that mathematics is a rational concept?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you believe that mathematics precedes matter?
Perhaps. I haven't thought about
Because
it.
matter is changing, mathematics is not, and mathematics is a governing principle over matter. In other words,
Yeah,
we
I
build our
guess
houses, we have to use proper mathematics.
I'm
I mean, the
thinking
Pythagoreans basically
there are
mathematics made
no whole
numbers almost.
numbers. There are
I'm
no
sorry,
whole numbers.
say it again.
There are no whole numbers in reality. I mean, all there is an approximation, no matter what, level of
Are you
abstraction you
saying
want to
because
go
we
to.
cannot experience perfection?
Huh?
Are you saying there's because we can't experience the perfection, so we're just approximating?
Um, yeah, because that kind of negates my point. If by saying I can't experience it, therefore it isn't. Is that what you're getting at? Because I was saying experience underlies our faculties, therefore, cause and effect and all that is a matter of reason, not necessarily that of reality. So you're saying, are you trying to undermine that by saying I am
Well,
using
I'm saying our experience is reflective, not objective. Would you agree with that?
reflective, not objective?
We are reflecting upon the objective in our experience, but we are not making or creating the objective real through our thinking. We're
Yeah, so
past.
I think it is that. I think we are idealizing things. It's the way our brains work.
Okay, but does that idealizing correspond to the perfect triangle, or are we creating the perfect triangle when we think? Because you said we can't.
I think if you were ever to find anything remotely shaped like a triangle in nature and you measured it, it wouldn't have the properties of a Euclidean triangle,
Oh,
right?
it would have the properties of Euclidean triangle imperfectly. That's how you know it, because you're saying right now you're comparing it to the perfection, and you're saying it approximates a perfection. That's how I know that it's a Euclidean triangle.
And
You see that?
that's one of those abstractions that I think are useful for humans. Say our ancient ancestors running around in the jungle, the fruit that is brightly colored might be more appealing. We have a draw to the appealing brightness of something, the vibrance of it. Now you
Hmm.
apply that to meat, now you have a problem where we think red meat, juicy meat is better, but in fact that has more worms and stuff. you know,
Hmm.
has more bacteria. It's not as safe. So our impression about the vibrance of color in this instance, for instance, can
But
still be
red is still red, right?
red is still red.
So the application of the red into us is not necessarily that
Well,
which moves toward the sanctity of existence, but red is still, or as far as we're approximating toward the perfection of red, it is
there
red.
are colors we can't see.
Uh-huh.
So when we're talking about red, it's just because somebody, you know, looks at the continuous line of the spectrum of light and says, we're going to put the pin in that part and say
Right.
that's red. There
But the
is
spectrum exists, right?
the spectrum of red exists. Is that what you're
The
saying?
spectrum of color exists.
Of color exists. Yes, to as far as we can tell, we're approximating though. I mean, why is it that the sky is blue or we see it as blue? Is it because the sky is literally blue, or is it because
No.
of some psychosomatic effect of the way our brain has always processed the sky?
Yeah. Color is a secondary property. It's not nothing. There's no color in anything really. We just see the light reflecting off of it, and there also is that third element of our interpretation. You know, the big controversy over the dress. You know, that whether it's blue or yellow or blue,
A good
um,
example. Yeah.
which is that's a great example. So yeah, you're right about that. But the fact that we can talk about the idea of blueness, though, intimates that there is such a thing as blue, although we can't experience it in perfection. There must be a perfection because that's what we're talking about.
I think, I guess, obviously, I'm saying the best we can do is approximate things. The best we can do is use that empiricism. And unfortunately, it leaves the metaphysicists in the lurch, right? You're feeling like, well, isn't there something that unites all of these things in the universe? And I wanted to point out, what does Hume say about color? He makes a great example. He gives you a color wheel or a spectrum, and he says they're all different shades of blue,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one missing, but you've never experienced that shade of blue. Could you supply it? Uh, and he points out most people would say no. Most
Right.
people would say it's just our experience with
Right.
colors. We've never seen it before. Could we supply it? You know. So all that to say, we're approximating, we're putting pins in things, we're making primitives for a larger abstraction on a bigger scale, right? I'm essentially saying what we look at analytically does not hold.
What we look at analytically does not hold.
It holds in an ideal state, but that state within our minds is the way we've grown, the way we've adapted or evolved, if you prefer, in order to make sense of objects in our environment. You know, um, I'll leave it there. See if you can.
Okay, but so when you're doing mathematics, are you skeptical when you do mathematics, or are you more towards certainty?
When I'm doing mathematics,
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, let's say mathematics
I'm
as it relates,
fearful.
or when you're writing code for computer.
Uh-huh. When I'm writing code for a computer, yeah,
Are you
given.
worried that your neighbor is, you're going to write a code, and are you worried that nobody else is going to understand what you're saying?
Oh, okay, yes, that's why you
Like
put commas.
Microsoft Word, or we know that we're living on the side of things working, and we have a high degree of certainty regarding that thing that it does what it is. And of course, we don't have complete certainty. That's my whole thing is basic reliability of sense perception. We've got to be able to have that, and that's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for perfection, just basic reliability of sense perception. No, we do not have the perfection of anything, but that doesn't lead us to skepticism. That leads us toward certainty.
Okay, well, I do think we're taking that for granted. Because,
but what reason do you have to doubt it as the 51% rather than the 49?
I'm kind of
aren't you taking that idea? You're basically wanting to be skeptical.
Yeah.
But you're not giving me the reason why you should be. It reminds me of Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman, wants to doubt the Bible because he said we don't know if the manuscripts were corrupted before they were, there
are millions and millions of discrepancies.
Well, no, it's not even that. That's not really his main thing, because even Bart Ehrman says that there's literally about 500,000 discrepancies. But the problem is because we have so many manuscripts. That's why there's so many discrepancies.
Yeah, yeah.
But he says the basic Christian doctrine is utterly unaffected by the discrepancies in the manuscriptural traditions. He said it doesn't matter. They don't affect it. They don't affect the message at all.
Yeah, I was just making fun of him because he drives me crazy.
But he's a hyper skeptic. We have over 24,000 manuscripts.
Well, he's agnostic. He's agnostic, so he's not.
Yeah, but he's an atheist for all practical purposes. But he says if there is a God, he's not like the God of the Bible or the wicked God of the Bible. But he used to be a Christian. He was an evangelical Christian at one time. But he comes to this point, and he basically has this hyper skeptical view that says that because there are differences in the manuscripts early on, he says we can't really know what was said. And if we did that, we would not know anything about any history, because the Bible is literally exponentially more reliable than any book of antiquity. So what he does is he inconsistently says, we know what the Bible says. He says, well, what about Herodotus or Tacitus? Do we know anything about it? He goes, oh, absolutely not. We know nothing about them because they don't know near as much as the New Testament. And it's like, come on, man, be real. No historian is going to, be like that. And but that's what I feel like you're doing. You're trying to squeeze a round peg into a square hole here.
I don't think you could supply the missing shade of blue if you had never experienced it. I think at every
that's just science, though. That's not. But if I did the missing shade of blue, I have not experienced it to categorize it. But blueness does exist. Even if I don't experience it, and even if I don't recognize it, it's still, which makes me think of George Barclay's, if a tree falls in the wilderness and in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it really make a noise?
Good for the mushrooms, and there is a cause and effect relationship that's still retained. So it's not like
his whole thing was, unless something is perceived, it's not real. There must be a perception for there to be, and he said that God is the ultimate perceiver. Therefore,
I trust our sensory perceptions in so much that they are useful in determining things that we need to do. For instance, we don't see ultraviolet, we don't see infrared.
Right.
These are on the spectrum. Why don't we see them? Because it's not useful.
Well, useful for the sanctity of existence.
Yeah, so let's go back to the sanctity of existence, right? So what is useful, right? Why don't we see those things? We only see these certain, the colors that we do see. Predators, plants, the fact that the plants produce, if you know about natural selection, if the plants are producing fruit, all fruit have seeds. It's nice to pass through a mammal's intestinal tract and get a nice bit of fertilizer on the way out, right? Why are they brightly colored as they are? They're colored in the spectrum we see because we were the ones picking them, right? So it is a chicken or egg kind of deal, but we are missing things in our perceptions, and so when we make idealized forms or when we make formulas or mathematics, those things are literally just for us. I don't think it applies to the rest of the universe. It's just for our own faculties to wrap our minds around it.
Yeah, but if they're not, if they're just for us, then why are we not creating them? We're not creating them.
We're not creating what?
We're not creating reality. We're just experiencing it. So why would it be just for us?
That's kind of what I'm saying. There's that, you're agreeing with me, I feel.
Well, I'm making a point that reality is objective and we experience it imperfectly, but our experience has no bearing on the reality of objective reality. Would you agree with that?
Doesn't that make my point? I'm missing why that's good for you.
Well, because objective reality just is. And our inability to experience it has no effect. The law of non-contradiction is what it is. And whether we apply it properly or not, what difference does that make for us? It just means we're stupid.
Yeah, we are pretty stupid.
Yeah, but we have the capacity, though, to experience it, right? And we can get better at it, right?
Experience what? Experience what?
Law of non-contradiction or any of these objective realities, we have the ability to correspond to it. We may be very poor at it, but as we practice, we get better and better. Would you agree with that?
As we practice, we get better and better. Yeah.
Okay. And so our job is to move up from the tricycle to the bicycle to the 10 speed. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're doing that as inept as we are. And as we do that, we see that coherence is coherent, whether we admit it or not. That's why I get upset at Niels Bohr and other people who get lazy and say that, contradiction. Karl Barth, some Christian theologians, used to say that contradiction is a hallmark of truth. And when people start saying stuff like that, I'm like, I want to get off this train. Let me off next stop. I don't want to be on this anymore. That's what Einstein said. If he said God doesn't play dice, he says if he does, in other words, there's chance or there's incoherence. He says if he does, then I'd rather be a cobbler or work in a gaming house. We want to see order, and that's what and there is an ordered universe, and certainly it is affected by entropy. But
did God have a choice in making the universe?
I'm sorry?
Did God have a choice in making the universe?
You mean like did he have free will, libertarian free will?
Yeah. Did he have the volition to say yay or nay on that one?
Well, think about it. Was there an array of choices before God when he had the opportunity to make a choice? In other words, think about it. When we say that God has free will, what we mean as theologians is that God is not constrained by anything other than himself. But it doesn't mean that, like William Lane Craig will say, oh, God has this whole, he's like at a shopping mall for realities. And he's like, oh, which one shall I choose? I think I choose this one. And it's like, no, because where did are those ideas, do they exist outside of God? Then God is contingent upon them because he is, experiencing them in a way he's subject to them. And it's like, no, God is not like that at all. So God's choice as he chooses, remember, there's no potentiality within him. So for choice for him, it's not the way that it is a choice for us. We can only experience things as potential beings that move from potentiality to actuality in everything that we do. Our sentences are predications. They are becomings. The dog has a tail. The predicate is adding something to dogness. That's how logic is for us. But God's logic is not predicating because he doesn't predicate. He knows everything instantaneously all at one moment.
So we have a fear of spiders. Does God have a perfect fear of spiders?
No, because fear of spiders, fear is a imperfection.
Privation.
Yeah, it's privation. That's right. No, God does not. And God does not have wrath in and of himself. It's a relational attribute that he has because of creation.
Okay, so I'm going to hit on privation then.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of organisms in this world that would seem to fly in the face of the idea that God created everything and then it fell or it became imperfect and then microevolution happened. You agree with microevolution, right?
Sure.
Okay, so species can adapt within their
Sure.
species,
That's science.
but you don't think that a species. You think that everything can change except the ability to have sex.
Everything can change. Well, no, I believe that the change is limited. You're not going to. We've never empirically verified a mutation beyond the level of, say, family in the taxonomical order of the kingdom. So I don't believe that it happens on a large scale. I believe in adaptation. I believe in temporal descent with genetic modification to a degree, but it's limited. Everything's within its kind, if you will. That's
So, okay, so I'm just going to throw out examples of some organisms that I think fly in the face of this.
okay.
The wasp laying its eggs inside the caterpillar or the caterpillar larvae, so that when the babies come out, they have a nice snack, right? And the wasp will even feminize those eggs that are going into smaller caterpillars or smaller larvae because girls need less, boys need more. So the whole way they even choose the sex of their offspring is based on this horrible thing that they do to caterpillar larvae, right? Is that a microevolutionary thing? I don't think the wasp knows any better. I think that I know that the animals are cursed in your worldview, but I don't see how, like, what was the better form of the wasp? What was it laying its eggs in before it decided this was the way to go? Because, you know what I mean? I don't think the wasp is smart enough, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I think the wasp is amazingly smart. If you see what animals do, how do all the butterflies, the monarch butterflies, know how to go down to Toluca in Mexico or in that area, millions of them to migrate every day? It's amazing. And the birds migrate to the south every day. How do they know that?
They're automatons.
Okay, and so they were determined toward that, right?
Yeah.
How do you have determination indeterminately?
A large window, and then you get one thing down the middle, whatever works, whatever keeps them alive, whatever keeps them.
Okay, so the goal is living, right?
The goal is living. Yeah, but why? Why is the goal living?
That's the point. Why is there such a thing as goal when there's no, what's a goalless universe?
Fluke.
My favorite answer to my atheist friends is anytime I ask them, I said, why is something the way it is? And they say, or why in evolution, why do we have determination indeterminately? And they say, because that's just the way we are. It's a real genius answer. And it's like, that's the best answer I've ever gotten. They can't answer it. You can't have intentional, unintentional intentionality.
This is why I say it's a fluke, because in the beginning there were amino acids for some reason. You get basic.
Are the amino acids changing?
Hold on. So let me.
Okay, I'll let you finish your
the whole song and dance here.
Okay.
So in the beginning, you have these inanimate amino acids. For some gosh darn crazy reason, they started replicating themselves. Replication in and of itself accomplishes perpetual existence in a matter of speaking.
That's right.
That's why we see them today. That's why a banana is 70% of a human genetically. That's just the way it is. It's not like they wanted it, right?
Okay, but listen, bro, you begin with the replicating DNA. That's your start.
Oh no.
You can't speak that in there.
Sorry. It cut out for a second. Can you repeat yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You begin with the replicating DNA as your starting point. You sneak in the very thing that you need to justify as your starting point. In other words, you sneak in teleology at the beginning. You can't do that. You're not allowed to. There's no efficient cause with Darwinian synthesis.
What we define as teleology, kind of the romanticizing of cause and effect, I would say, it doesn't hold all the way down. I would argue. I think, yes, if we go even further back, there was chemistry. Chemistry was
very romantic. Chemistry was very romantic. It was very purposeful. You can't have purpose unintentionally. If it's just chemicals, then it's just chemicals today. But you're valuing to have this conversation. Therefore, it's not just chemicals.
But that's assuming that you're assuming a premise. You're assuming that all things must hold to some universal. I don't think genes know what they're doing.
Do you
And
know what you're doing?
yeah, exactly. Do I know what I'm doing? I think I do. I'm approximating.
Well, you would. It seems like very, very likely that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, so we can reach an impasse on the on this particular one where it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm justifying something with the thing I claim to be explaining, and yeah, I got you. But you hear what I'm saying. Some things can appear as if they are intentional, motivated by something. They can, they appear to be a form of desire or a form of, our desire for the opposite sex usually is for the replication of genes.
That's right.
And the genes don't know that's what's going on. It's just what works. I mean,
that's right. And the working is existence. And so if existence is valuable, then the most valuable existence is that which is pure existence, which is God, which is why he deserves every moment of.
Oh, cutting out.
Oh, I said, and so since existence is valuable, we all know that, then it only logically follows that the very heart of existence itself, which is God himself, deserves all worship and praise and honor for this glorious thing called existence.
I'm fine with that.
I mean, it just seems so logical to me. People say, oh, God is so proud or whatever. It's like, no, he's worthy of it. And what a joy. If I am happy that I have my life right now is extremely happy. Every day is like a vacation for me almost, and if I am happy and I'm enjoying existence, to me, it is the very essence to give thanks to him who gives me every moment of my breath. And what a joy it is to be able to love him. Everything, Michael, everything in my life, everything gets old. I mean, I like cars right now. I like to watch. I don't have a TV, so I watch car blogs all the time. I enjoy learning about the technology and stuff like that regarding cars. But yeah. You know what? That'll get old after a while, and I'll move on to something else. Everything that I have engaged in, including sex, I would say, sex is the most strong desire that males have, I think. But even that in itself is not ultimately satisfying. And the thing that I found that is the ultimate satisfaction of my life is worshiping and loving the one who gives me every moment of my existence. That is the great joy of my life.
I think for all intents and purposes, if there wasn't a God, it wouldn't matter because you've found one in your mind. You know what I mean? If you've defined it in such a way that it gives you joy and peace and, a continued...
But the goal is not delusion. The goal is correspondence to truth.
It's not delusion though, because you've created a cosmic object, right?
But it's not real. If it's not real, it's not true.
Real in here.
Yeah, but if I say that I want to make this reality in my head, as we talked about the last thing, I want to make it reality in my head that I don't want there to be gravity. I really want to float. So I'm going to go up on the roof and I'm going to be happy with my non-gravity.
Would you agree though, if a child spontaneously appeared, let's say was born, and they look, and their parents and the doctors and everyone in the hospital was levitating, they wouldn't know any better. They would be assuming nothing, right? They're just using their sensory experience to download the primitives to the logic. Essentially, we have to learn logic by observation and experiment. That's what we're doing as kids. We're experimenting.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that I think the principles, we learn how to use our logic, but logic itself is just something that, again, it's logos. In the beginning was logos, it says. In the beginning was the word, which is logos, and the word was with God, and the word was God. God is logic, some people have said, and what it means is there's coherence. even a dog knows the law of non-contradiction. He knows that if a bone is thrown a long distance and a dog can see it, and he comes to a fork.
Breaking up. Repeat
I'm
yourself.
sorry.
Can you?
Oh, the dog. If you throw a bone down a road and there's a fork in the road and the dog sees it, the bone goes down there. The dog comes to that fork in the road. He knows it's either one or the other. He even knows the law of non-contradiction. He knows it's not going to be both. And so I think we all have that capacity to think at a fundamental level. That's the law of non-contradiction.
I think that there are levels of consciousness. I think if you look at a dog, they're definitely a lower level of consciousness than we are, and all the way down to the bee who's going through the motions, doing his thing. I mean, they are all slaves, but none of them are thinking to themselves, I need to be liberated. I'm tired of taking care of that old bag. They're not saying this to themselves. They're enacting their programming.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are the same. We're just a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of abstraction.
But bees don't create philosophical societies. Would you agree with that?
Bees don't create, yeah. Okay.
So we're on a different level. I mean, there's a level of consciousness within this creation, but we are the crown jewel and we are the caregivers of this creation.
We are the crown jewel. We are the caregivers of this generation.
Of this creation.
Tangential point. What's her name? Coco the gorilla. Had emotions, had an attachment to a cat, it was, and was really picky about her men. Mm-hmm. And they tried to get her to make friends with a lot of different dude gorillas, and she wasn't having it. They were all jerks in her mind. She just was really picky about it. Never really got to make a baby. Because what they wanted to observe was her teaching her baby sign language, because she learned sign language. She had, essentially the IQ of about 90, I think. Somebody with slight mental retardation. That's a clue to me that this emergent phenomenon of consciousness is our particular brand of it is not the end all be all. And so I know what you're saying is, of course, it's not the end all be all. There is a perfect form of it. But I don't know. Perfection seems to be closing in on infinity. I don't know how we would ever have a thing that existed in nature that is, physically existent, that had a perfect anything.
Well, that might be true. I mean, at least in the world in which we live right now, because I mean, Plato would certainly like you saying that, because we're everything here is an imperfect copy of the perfect and the ideal. And I would hold to Christian Platonism, which would say that there are perfect ideals. Are you familiar with Plato's philosophy, his theory of ideas?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say that the perfection of the realm of the ideals is just ideas in the mind of God, and he is the perfection himself. As those
in the realm of the ideals, basically every being, assuming that such a thing exists, every being has its perfect form, and we are the imperfect reflections of it, right? We're assuming beings exist. Yeah, we're assuming that we're not just made up of fundamental particles, and stardust. There's a big amount of assumptions there. We're thinking discrete objects are a thing. I mean, that's a table, but there is no perfect table, in the heavenlies. There is no, you see what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to just undercut the whole thing so we don't even really have a good conversation. I'm just saying, like, this seems obvious to me.
That we don't experience anything in its perfection in this world. I'm not sure what your point is.
Didn't Aristotle believe in, eternal things, right?
I don't know. I know that he basically, his epistemology was very much empirical. He did hold, I don't think he doubted the theory of forms. He just said that we've got to start with it down here. And so the form of something is within the being itself, and then the matter is the outworking of that. So the unity would be the form, the diversity would be the changing experience of it on our outward. You know, his theory of substances is what he called it, and everything has a
Breaking up.
matter.
I heard everything except the last part.
Okay, so everything has a substance. Like I'm the substantial form of humanity, and there's the form of who I am, and it works itself out into my being a matter, the matter of what I am. That's the changing part of me, and the unchanging part would be the form, and that the substance is what I am. I don't think that he really disagreed with Plato regarding. He just didn't like placing the forms up in heaven because that didn't really solve anything, because you still got multiple forms upstairs. Yeah. He said, let's just bring it down here. So he was an empiricist, and Plato was a rationalist.
Yeah. So on my end, or the way I'm thinking of it is, human beings are just another shape of monkey, you know? And so what is a monkey? A monkey is a mammal, comes from the vertebrate side of, you know, everything. You go all the way down, you know.
But you're presupposing the Darwinian synthesis, which has no efficiency. That's the problem I have with it.
So, okay, so this is interesting, because you had kind of said, you know, evolution is essentially silly because it has no efficient cause, you know, in that there's just, you know, interactions between things for no reason.
Right.
There's seeking out survival for no reason. And what I'm trying to say is, incidentally, things that exist today are here because they figured out some way to make it here. And the way that they figured out, and I know I'm being teleological, but, you know, try to understand what I'm saying. We do speak in teleological ways. It's just really hard to get it, you know, to be.
Because teleologically exists. It's kind of hard not to.
Well, okay. But at the lowest level, and just with you know, our world, I talked about, you know, the amino acids, because incidentally they found a way to make it to today by repeating themselves. They don't need an efficient cause. It's incidental. You know, there's no one mutation that was better than another.
Yeah, but you're relegating everything to mere physicality, and we know that physicality is not everything that is.
I don't want
one of the problems. This is why Darwinian evolution. This is my problem since the Enlightenment and Darwin synthesis and all these things actually cut our inquiry in half. It threw away the whole ability to think about mind and purpose in relation to matter. And we've got to, this is why I think we're recapturing this. And I think we're going to have a scientific explosion. I think there's a renaissance on the horizon, I believe, coming in inquiry. And it's going to return us back to a day when we could think about things rather than just look at things and watch how they react to each other. Now we can look and say, why does it do what it's doing? And this is a great question.
Is there an example that you can give me of like a scientist going down that route? I mean, I did find Sean Carroll using metaphysics. And are you saying that people like him picking up the mantle is happening right now or something?
Yeah, I think we are recapturing, actually starting with the church. And you only see things, you know, I believe that essentially it was Immanuel Kant was the big one who, you know, by saying we can't think about metaphysics anymore, who opened the door. Although, I mean, Hume was before him, and then you had Descartes brings, you know, emphasizing epistemology and stuff. But Kant really is the one who brought us to this point where we're not allowed to think about things that are not physical, that we can't experience with our senses. And then, you know, with the introduction of Newton's early modern physics, we saw a refutation of Aristotle's physics, which was horrible. But what they did is they took Aristotle's physics and they also threw out his metaphysics, and they threw the baby out with the bathwater. And you know, it's been well said that Aristotle was the Stargate to medieval theology. I don't remember if we talked about this before, but
St. Augustine.
Well, and yeah, but there was a recapturing of Aristotelian thought through the Muslims. When Muhammad
Right.
conquered, northern Africa, they came up through Morocco into
Ooh.
Spain and into France, and then they were pushed back.
All
And
right, hold
they,
that thought. My computer is going to die. Be right back.
okay. La 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 la. Sorry for the dead space.
No, baby, I'm busy. Love you. Busy, busy, busy. This is so interesting. Yeah, we have good combos, man. We'll have to do it again some other day. I know you've gone over your hour, and it seemed like all your videos are like an hour or less. So
Yeah, we need to close up here pretty soon. I've got some. I got to prepare teaching a class tomorrow.
Have I given you a decent challenge? You said you never had a real challenge.
Not the least. I hate to be a nasty, but no, not at all.
No, I totally agree with we've gone too far in one direction, and we need to have more philosophy informing our lives and metaphysics. We need to understand.
If you even look at men like Richard, you look at this. I mean, I used to hang out in the atheist community and stuff, and there's a renaissance going on in this scientific community for philosophy that is happening at a very interesting pace. And like I said, it's also happening in the theological communities. We're recapturing these categories that have been lost for almost 300 years. And it's like, people are like, what? You mean this is the way they thought? And it's like a recapturing of Thomas Aquinas. His thinking is unbelievable. He's the one that synthesized Aristotle. And with the recapturing of Aristotelian categories, and some people have said that, all of Western philosophy are just footnotes to Aristotle and Plato. And most of the guys today, they say, oh, that's stupid. I have a couple of friends who have degrees in philosophy. And the amount of ignorance that they exhibit on these issues is shocking, because they don't study. They learn so little about the ancients, and everything is about enlightenment forward.
I think right. So we need to study those things. We need to not throw.
I think we need a new renaissance. I really do.
Yeah, we need a new renaissance. I completely agree with that. But you are saying something like evolutionary theory is ridiculous just because it doesn't conform to, doesn't have an efficient cause. It doesn't have an efficient cause. It just happens. It's a phenomenon.
Because you're efficiency right now, and evolution can't account for that.
No, I mean, yes, we are essentially automatons. We have as if free will, but have you ever seen neurons and how they?
Okay, you're assuming a materialistic worldview, though.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're entirely right. You're entirely right. So I don't think there's a challenge to the underlying. I think you are too, though. You're assuming a spiritual, worldview, whatever you call it, a supernatural worldview. You're saying a supernatural
because my being necessitates it. That's where I reason to that.
No, you're giving an efficient cause to something that may not have one.
Well, am I efficient? I don't see how you could deny that.
So when you eat, you're eating because of the compulsion to keep you alive for your genes.
Right. And I could choose not to eat.
You could choose not to eat, right, for some other thing. So this.
And would you say that I were diseased if I did not eat?
Well, depending on your reasoning, right? So if you have, like, let's say you're doing a hunger strike for some really great cause, or a cause that's important to you that you value.
Okay, but no, that cause would be for the sanctity of existence. I'm saying if I stopped eating because I just said I don't want to live anymore, would you say that I were in a state of disease, dis-ease, not functioning the way I should?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
But
why?
But, I mean, I know I'm approximating, though, because it is really just an emergent phenomenon. I mean, yeah, you are depressed, let's say, but I don't know. I'm not in your head. Everything you understand is within yourself, and has a boundary line.
But let's imagine I'm your loved one. What are you going to do? You're going to say, well, I don't know.
What was that?
Let's imagine I'm your loved one. I'm your son or your daughter or something like that. And I do not I am depressed. I don't want to eat anymore. Are you just going to say, well, I don't know, you might be bad off. I don't know what's in your mind.
I
So,
wouldn't do that because we're social mammals.
right.
We're pack
And,
animals.
and
You know?
you would say, I love you and you need help and I'm going to help you. Even if you think I'm not, let's measure a drug addict. And you said, and they said, don't leave me alone. I don't want any help. And you say, no, I am going to love you. No, let's say this. They have an ear infection. And ear infections cause a lot of pain for them to get it fixed. They'd have to lance their eardrum. Let's say we're living in the olden days or something like that. And you have to hold that child. And he's like, no, I don't want it. It hurts. You're going to say, I am going to go through this and you're going to suffer because I love you, because your life needs this right now. And so you are driven toward the sanctity of existence, even if it causes pain on the one that you are trying to help.
You could have things that inhibit you from doing that, though. I mean, I could have an illusion in my mind that person deserves it for some reason.
And you would be diseased.
I would be diseased if I had that illusion. Well,
your illusion would be a bad thing, right?
Yeah, but we could just substitute idea. Let's just say I had the impression that it was fine because they deserved it. What then? Am I wrong?
Yes. You're even implying that right now. You have an illusion. Remember, it's not true. It's an illusion.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a nice guy. I can think in terms of negation from myself, right? As if I was God. But it wouldn't be wrong. It would be unfortunate for the sake of our species. You know, I want to stay alive. I want my fellow man to not have too hard of a time. But that's because I'm a pack animal. You know, when a baboon shows up to a new family, he kills all the kids.
Yeah, is that a good thing?
It sucks on our end. When we see that, we anthropomorphize it and we go,
why? But why does it suck?
On our end, it sucks.
Why?
Because we want perfect justice. We think in terms of
absolutes. So there's such a thing as justice.
We think in terms of absolutes. There's such a thing as fairness. So
okay. So the sanctity of existence is a real thing. And that which violates it is not fair.
That which violates it is not fair. Man, I really do feel like there's like a little space, a little crack, and you go right there.
Well, to me, it's a big gaping hole. And to you, you're just not seeing it.
I mean, I do see this. I do understand what you're saying, especially after listening to that other video again. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I understand what you're getting at. I'm trying to give you like a lot of information and then asking rhetorically, really, do we find a universal truth in this? Is there some efficient cause that has been instantiated somewhere? Yeah, and I am assuming a materialistic worldview when I say no, quote unquote. But then again, it's not crazy for me to go down that line, see how far it goes. And I do think it goes farther than you've looked. I think you should really read some evolutionary books, you know?
Well, yeah, you got to give me any reason to do any of this stuff. But you got that Eastern mysticism thing on your wall there behind you.
Yeah.
Is that a materialistic perspective?
What do you mean? Materialistic perspective? What do you mean?
Well, is there a spiritual realm in that? Is that Hinduism or what?
Yeah. Well, that's the Buddha.
Buddha.
Siddhartha. You know, honestly, it's just pretty pretentious. Let's just take that out of there.
Solves that. Well, listen, Michael, I need to get going. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do.
Well, it's been awesome. Always good.
Well, we can do it again. I mean, I enjoy talking to you. You're very kind, and like I said, I appreciate the fact that you'll concede points and are not worried about, you know, really not worried about losing the argument so much. A lot of people are really, you know, nervous about that, and they get all defensive and stuff. So I appreciate your open-mindedness, and I hope I am too.
And I was a Christian for a long time, so you know, I've thought about these dichotomies, these, you know, things a lot So I appreciate the nuance. It's kind of like with the abortion issue.
Mm-hmm.
To say it's not something we should be considering, I think, is to miss humanity. We need to figure out when a person becomes a person. When are we gonna put that, stake in the ground and say now they have human rights? So yeah, I think that there's lots of questions that people, tribalism and assuming materialism or something, that you can just draw conclusions, just radical conclusions too quickly. So I appreciate the nuance. I'm happy to float in between things. I don't mind not being settled in that sense, because all this is just thought experiment, right? We're just playing the human game. So yeah, it was definitely a pleasure. I did take it more seriously this time than I did last time, though.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And if I am right, the ramifications are very serious, and you realize that. I know, because you walked in a Christian perspective for quite a while.
If you are right, see, okay, so explain to me really quick. You're saying I'm assuming materialism when I say A plus B equals C necessarily, and then you're saying no, it's supernaturalism because A plus B equals C. Are we not on opposite? I mean, are you not just doing the same thing I'm doing?
Because I'm saying that matter is contingent by definition, and I'm saying there's something immaterial behind matter, because matter, you can't have a complete regress, an infinite regress of contingencies. So
you're assuming coherence. You're assuming.
That's right. I am. LNC, the law of non-contradiction, and sense experience. I am assuming those. Now, if you want to attack those, that's fine, but you got to give a reason for why you're not, and how you're going to have any inquiry without them.
If there were, yeah, I'll just give you it really quick, and then we can wrap it up. But basically, okay. If there were, if everything that can exist does in some fashion, then opposites exist to a degree. We can approximate an opposite, and we could say that no, those things do not exist in the same relation at the same time. I keep messing that up, but that the law of non-contradiction holds, but it only holds in so much as we can approximate the opposite of something. I do think there's a lot of symmetry in the universe, and antiparticles exist. We're finding a bunch of new ones.
But antiparticles it's just a fancy word for something. I think that we don't understand, but you're not saying antiparticles are nothing, right? My dichotomy is going to be between being and nothing.
I don't know if you could describe nothing. We have no sensory experience of nothing. We have no experience of nothing.
We can't experience nothing because the idea is something.
Yeah, there you go.
If there's something, there's always been something. That's the whole point. We can't even conceive of nothing. We can think about the idea that there could be such a thing as nothing, but even the idea itself of nothing is something.
Right. Well, the way we're accustomed to thinking of nothing is a negation of something, but nothing could very well just be another type of something. I mean, you heard of gauge theory and things like that.
Well, those are people that play, like Lawrence Krauss. They like to play word games. That's all that is. They're just informing new meanings to the words. I'm sorry?
He capitalizes the word nothing because he recognizes that that's not far enough for some people like yourself. And he readily admits that. You should definitely read A Universe from Nothing.
I've listened to his lectures on it. He's just an idiot. I'm sorry. But 500 years from now, nobody's going to know who Lawrence Krauss is. He's selling books is what he's doing. It's really convenient for him to say nothing is, a vacuum or empty space is nothing. And he speaks in that way as a teaser. And then he says, well, I don't really mean that. I really mean it.
Listen to what I'm saying. My argument is there is an asymmetry in the universe. That slight asymmetry gives rise to ripple effects in some form of space. Space may be eternal. Things like that.
But space is not personal. Would you agree with that?
I don't know what you mean by personal.
Coming up with mathematical formulas, valuing things.
Having a slight asymmetry, in some fashion, means there is no such thing as contradictions. Truly, no true contradictions. Because if you're saying that,
But you're saying you're relying on the principle that there are absolute contradictions by affirming that there are no contradictions.
Because I'm saying it, right? Because I'm approximating.
But
Because I believe the universe is still growing. There are infinite points on a line. We can draw conclusions about small areas and objects within those areas. But to say that we know what the universe is, the depth and breadth of the universe, I know you wouldn't assume that, but oh man, I lost it. But you know what I mean. I hope.
Okay, well, listen, I got to get going.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Michael, and you have a great weekend. And if I don't talk to you, have a great Christmas and holiday season.
Pleasure as always. Good
Okay,
time.
Michael. All right, we'll be talking.
All right.
All right, bye.